Revenge with Karen. The second he strutted in with that $400 haircut and a gold watch that probably cost more than our entire IT budget, I knew this dude wasn't here to build, he was here to slice. Gavin, new CFO, fresh from some startup where they think culture means having La Croix in 6 flavors. He didn't even sit down before announcing he was auditing operational efficiencies. Translation: heads were gonna roll, and he was bringing the guillotine. Started with the soft targets: customer success, admin, HR, women over 35 with 401k tickets and kids in braces. One by one, they were optimized into LinkedIn posts about new beginnings. He never used names, just salary bands and spreadsheet tabs. Redundancies, he called them, like we were rusted bolts on a factory floor. I watched from my corner cubicle, mouse still moving, face blank as my Slack DMs, except I wasn't idle. I'd already started backing up my personal logs, scripts, and trigger keys to a remote Raspberry Pi duct-taped behind my TV at home. Call it paranoia. I call it experience. I've seen the corporate Kool-Aid man burst through the drywall before, swinging synergy slogans like axes. But Gavin wasn't just the messenger. He enjoyed it. You could see it in the way he smiled while killing pensions. By the way, quick thing, if you're already hooked, maybe drop a like or hit that subscribe button. Only takes a sec, but it means the world to the crew bringing you these stories. 97% of y'all are just ghosting through like Gavin at an ethics seminar. Don't be Gavin, be better. All right, back in, so I stayed quiet. Didn't argue, didn't speak up in meetings unless asked. But I took notes. I watched him fire a mom of 3 via Zoom because her cost-to-output ratio dipped during chemo. I watched him promote a guy who thought GitHub was a dating site. Gavin ran the numbers, sure, but he didn't know how those numbers ran. He had no clue the infrastructure was one coffee-stained napkin away from collapse. Everything was patchwork, legacy code, undocumented API bridges, scheduled cron jobs older than his Instagram account. But I knew where the bones were buried, because I was the one who buried them. I'd been holding that whole Frankenstein monster together with rubber bands and midnight panic. When Gavin called the first IT leadership meeting, I wasn't even on the invite. One of the guys forwarded it to me last minute like, "You might want to be there." I walked in, took a seat in the back, and sure enough, he opened with, "All right, gentlemen." No eye contact, just charts. I was invited to take notes. Classic. That's when I knew it was starting, not just the layoffs, the erasure, my name gone from our latest architecture doc. I designed half that diagram in blood, sweat, and Red Bull, but suddenly it was a collaborative effort from our emerging talent. I stared at the screen and felt that old familiar burn behind my eyes, not tears, not yet, just fire. I went home that night and created a new repo, private, encrypted. Inside it, I uploaded a file I hadn't touched in 3 years. A little script I wrote during the last reorg, labeled failover silence sh. Just in case. Not revenge, not yet, just contingency. Because the thing about guys like Gavin, they think respect is something you earn with a title, but respect isn't given in spreadsheets. It's buried in shell scripts, hidden behind admin tokens, and sometimes it waits. They say history doesn't repeat. It sure as hell likes to plagiarize. I'm sitting in a conference room with Gavin's chosen knights of the round table, 6 dudes in button-downs and startup sneakers, all nodding along like bobbleheads, while Gavin clicks through slides about streamlining verticals and cost center consolidation. The air smells like cold brew and cowardice. I'm not at the table. I'm behind it, taking notes. Literally. Gavin thought it would be helpful if I transcribed the meeting. For alignment, of course. This ain't my first rodeo. I've seen this exact playbook run before, twice. Once under a COO who got ousted for expensing Vegas escorts as vendor outreach, and once when a consultant replaced half our systems with a SAW platform that collapsed during tax season. Each time, I was the last woman standing, until I wasn't. So I started prepping the ark before the rain hit. Quietly. Methodically. That night, I logged into every terminal I still had root access to and began yanking my personal scripts. Stuff I'd written over 6 years that basically were the duct tape keeping our servers upright. From dynamic cache pings to failover alerts to a watchdog script that rebooted legacy cron timers when they failed silently at 3 a.m. Yeah, those scripts. No one else knew how they worked. Hell, no one even knew they existed. Gavin's DevOps visionaries were too busy syncing Slack emojis to notice the blinking light on the UPS. Next morning, I checked the shared proposal deck for our upcoming infrastructure overhaul, the one I practically built from scratch in a weekend when the cloud vendor hiked prices mid-quarter. My name? Gone. Poof, like it was never there. The title page credits the team, but in the revision history, Gavin's nephew, Colton, is listed as lead architect. Colton once asked me if IP addresses were copyrighted. Colton, who spelled kernel like the popcorn. I scroll back to version 12.4, my draft. Line by line, I see my logic rewritten, redlined, rewritten again, stripped of context, stripped of safety nets. I had load balancers running heartbeat checks every 30 seconds. Colton deleted those for performance. Performance, my ass. That man couldn't performance review a stapler without asking HR. I walk into the next team huddle, smiling like my dignity ain't dissolving in battery acid. Gavin's talking budget forecasts and trying to pronounce Kubernetes like it's French. I raise my hand and ask, real casual, hey, just curious, anyone know what happened to the orphan license key tied to our Redis clusters? It's still pointed at the old AWS zone. Silence. Blinking. Gavin says, let's table that for now. I nod, sure, just figured someone should know it'll expire in 21 days. Still nothing. They move on. Colton starts pitching some half-baked Jenkins pipeline he read about on Reddit. I tune out. My mind's already elsewhere, thinking about that license key. Thinking about the script I wrote last year to gracefully fail over those Redis nodes, thinking how easy it would be to not deploy it when the key lapses. And somewhere deep in my code vault at home, I rename a script. I call it Heartbeat Last Chance SH, because these guys, they're playing house with my blueprints. But I'm the one holding the fuse box. They called it a reorg, but it felt more like a digital lobotomy. One minute, I've got a team of 4 seasoned engineers who can patch a Linux kernel in their sleep, and the next, I'm alone. My team, gone. Laid off, reallocated, or offboarded for strategic flexibility. As Gavin put it in his Friday memo written like a hostage letter. My access? Downgraded so fast I couldn't even open my own automation dashboards. I had to submit a ticket to view logs I wrote. Gavin said it was part of tier restructuring. I asked what tier I was. He smiled and said, utility adjacent. Utility adjacent, like I was a damn circuit breaker waiting to be flipped off. And the cherry on this shit sundae? Gavin appoints his nephew, Colton, same clown who once emailed me a JPEG of a QR code and asked how to upload it to the server, as DevOps lead. Day 1, he swaggers into my office, which is now technically a converted storage closet, and says, so, SSH, that's like a password, right? I stared at him for a solid 5 seconds, trying to gauge if he was trolling me or just born with negative brain cells. I wanted to ask if he thought DNS stood for do not speak, but I just smiled and said, close enough. That night, I started laying traps. Not malware, not sabotage, just little ghosts, scripts labeled as maintenance routines, timed toggles hidden inside cron jobs, a heartbeat demon that only listened for my key. If it didn't hear it after a few days, it'd quietly alert no one and start a countdown. The thing about building a system from scratch, you know every crack in the foundation, every brittle dependency, every version mismatch duct taped together at 3 a.m. with monster energy and despair. Gavin thought I was just some overpaid sysadmin who wore cardigans and smelled like coffee grounds. He didn't realize I was God in that machine, so I planted one more seed. Failover silence SH, buried deep. Scheduled to run only if 3 very specific conditions were met. My admin token gets revoked. My endpoint logs a deactivation, no longer in the Slack directory. It has no comments, no error output, just silence. A script that doesn't scream, it vanishes. And when it vanishes, so do the backups. Colton was too busy updating his LinkedIn to cloud strategist to notice. Gavin was busy gutting finance. Legal was rewriting NDAs like it was arts and crafts hour. No one asked me how I was handling the reorg. No one noticed the blinking yellow light on server 17. Test box I renamed Colton Training Lab just to make sure he ignored it. Humiliation is a funny thing. It either breaks you or it crystallizes into clarity. For me, it made every keyboard click feel holy. Like I was writing my own Bible, one shell script at a time. They wanted me invisible. They were going to get their wish. But first, I had to disappear the right way. Quietly, permanently, on my own terms. The first check-in email came on a Monday morning. Subject line all sunshine and exclamation points. Hey, just touching base, smiling face with smiling eyes. HR wanted to know how I was adjusting to the new structure. Translation: they were sniffing for instability. I replied with a 3-sentence summary that could have been copied from a toaster manual. Didn't matter what I said. They'd already marked me in red. By Thursday, they were scheduling weekly wellness syncs. Laura from HR wore pastel scarves and asked if I felt aligned with the evolving culture. I told her I was still doing the same work I'd always done, minus the people, tools, and authority. She smiled like I'd confirmed her suspicions and jotted something in a notebook that definitely wasn't blank. Gavin, meanwhile, had leveled up his gaslight game. He started CCing me on emails mid-thread. No context, no subject history, just things like "can we get this handled?" and thoughts. At first I scrambled to catch up, scared I'd missed something. Then I realized it was tactical, a slow burn erasure. Drown me in vagueness, then point to the smoke and say, "See, she's always confused." Colton was no help. He once forwarded me an urgent JIRA ticket labeled "critical prod outage." It was a permissions issue on a dev box he accidentally deleted. I fixed it in under 3 minutes. Thanked me by tagging himself as co-resolver in the follow-up. Gavin replied with a thumbs up and added, "Love to see cross-functional hustle." And that's when the self-doubt slithered in. Quiet, poisonous. I'd walk past glass walls filled with people in war room meetings I used to lead, now behind locked Slack channels and guarded smiles. I'd second-guess every keyboard stroke. Was I documenting too much? Not enough. Was my tone off in that email? My silence read as defiance? But rage has a way of forging clarity. I stopped asking questions, stopped replying to HR with anything more than timestamps and links. If they were going to ghost me, I'd make sure they never found the body. So I finalized the kill switch. It sat inside the heartbeat demon, quiet as a grave, listening, waiting. If my admin token was revoked, boom. The sequence would trigger. Disable automated replication. Validate cloud handshakes. Freeze the backup queue. Redirect status monitors to loopback hell. No alerts, no fireworks, just a polite, invisible curtain drop. To mark the moment, I began tagging all my commits with a version note. #ver, 9 mins tucked neatly into the change logs like a ghost signature. Nobody read them, least of all Gavin. He thought change logs were something legal deals with. But every commit, every config, every tweak I made had that same tag. 9 minutes, the window. The grace period between when they'd hit the button and when the lights would die. Isolation wasn't new. But this time it wasn't hollow. It was tactical, surgical. I wasn't being exiled. I was preparing the stage. Let them keep their wellness syncs. I was syncing too, across machines they didn't even know they still depended on. Every server, every load balancer, every neglected failover, because when the curtain dropped, it wouldn't be loud. It'd be precise. And Gavin, he was going to learn that spreadsheets don't reboot systems, but I used to. The test environment was already on life support when I gave it a little nudge. Not a real failure, just a polite nap. I disabled a background cron that pinged one of our less sexy services, the monthly license reconciler for a third-party vendor we barely used. It didn't even affect the core app, just made a few red lines show up on the dashboards Gavin liked to parade around during his investor readiness meetings. I flipped the switch at 10:43 a.m. sharp. At 10:47, the panic began. Gavin burst into the war room looking like someone told him the cappuccino machine was sentient and unionizing. "Why is this red? Who let this go red?" Colton was already halfway under the desk, Googling what is failover protocol. I was sipping coffee. I leaned forward, tapped a few keys, and re-enabled the cron. 12 seconds. No drama, no raised voice. Just enough time for Gavin to feel the walls flex. I shrugged, was probably DNS. The oldest sysadmin lie in the book, but no one in that room knew better. Gavin exhaled like he'd just survived a plane crash. Colton clapped, actually clapped. But Gavin didn't forget. That red line had humiliated him. Investors were on site, needed someone to bleed for it. The next morning, HR scheduled a follow-up meeting. Laura had traded her scarf for a necklace that looked like a mood ring trying to hide a migraine. Gavin was there, in person. Big mistake. He came in hot. "We've been reviewing your performance trajectory, and it's clear your position no longer aligns with." I slid a folder across the table. Light blue, 1 tab. Inside, a printed clause from my original employment contract, plus 2 amendments I'd personally drafted after the last reorg, when they tried to demote my role into oblivion. Clause 7C. Termination of employee with privileged infrastructure knowledge shall require a 60-day transition protocol to be signed off by legal, IT security, and finance, with detailed documentation and source code sign-off. Clause 7D, failure to observe 7C grants said employee right to pursue damages and report regulatory risk exposure to governing audit bodies. Gavin blinked. HR blinked harder. Legal hadn't been looped in yet. The folder may as well have been a live grenade. He leaned back. We'll revisit this. Cool, I said, folding my arms. Let me know if I should prep the audit logs. He didn't respond. He just left, shoes squeaking like the room rejected him. Laura offered me a weak smile and said we should let the dust settle. I told her it already had. They just didn't know what they were breathing in. Back at my desk, I updated the demon. Gave it a new conditional. If they tried to push through a termination flag without triggering the proper sign-off sequence, the script wouldn't just disable backups, would corrupt their sync keys by default and leave a note in the error logs that read simply, per protocol. That clause, I printed it myself 2 years ago. Wrote the damn language, too, back when a different CFO tried to consolidate roles and ended up rehiring me as a contractor for 3x the pay. The warning shot was fired. Soft, surgical, but they felt it. Gavin started showing up to meetings with a laptop instead of just his ego. Colton stopped emailing me memes. I hadn't taken them down, not yet, but I'd shown them something far worse, that I could. The calendar invite hit our inboxes at 6:12 a.m. sharp. Subject line, company-wide alignment session mandatory. No agenda. Just a location, a time, and Gavin's smug little signature block with the Helvetica quote about vision without execution. That man loved quotes the way possums love dumpsters. Rumors ignited like a bad wire in a wet server room. Layoffs, merger, product pivot. Some said Gavin was stepping down. Others whispered it was a mass firing. I knew exactly what it was. I ironed my nicest blouse, the one with the sleeves that made me look like I cared about things like synergy and quarterly goals. Brought in donuts from the place HR always said was too expensive. Raspberry jelly, maple bacon, that obnoxiously blew one Colton liked with the Fruit Loops on top. I placed the box in the break room and left a sticky note. For my fellow redundancies, cheers. Then I sat down at my terminal and got to work for the last time. Step 1. Disable all logging tied to my shell access. Not erase, just mute, like whispering in a room of screamers. I left the outbound traffic clean, the audit logs pristine. No flags, no alerts, just empty space where my keystrokes used to echo. I updated the heartbeat demon, reassigning its final check to a new variable, $death trigger. I almost laughed. It felt stupid, cinematic, but it was real, and it was mine. Last line of code I typed, #goodbye world, then I shut the shell. Permanently. On my way to the all-hands, I stopped by the backup scheduler. A quiet little interface only 3 people knew existed, and 2 of them were gone. Opened the note field and added a final message. This house runs on trust. Saved, logged out. By the time I got to the meeting room, the energy was crackling. People looked like kids waiting outside the principal's office, eyes darting, phones vibrating with Slack theories. I smiled at everyone, said good morning, complimented a blouse, poured stale coffee into a cup with a chip in the handle. Gavin stood near the projector, pacing like a man preparing for a wedding proposal or a live autopsy. He looked tense, not scared yet, but tight in the jaw like he knew something was off and couldn't name it. Colton sat behind him pretending to manage tabs on his laptop. I sat in the front row, crossed my legs, took a sip of coffee. Let them wonder, let them wait. The storm wasn't coming. It was already coded. He started with a smile. Always the smile. That tight, overcoached politician's smirk that never reached his eyes. Thanks everyone for being here, Gavin said into the mic, standing dead center like he was about to unveil a new company mascot. As we continue to align with market agility, we're making hard choices. Leadership choices, cultural choices, buzzword confetti. Colton was nodding like a bobblehead with a caffeine addiction. HR flanked the edges of the room like emotional janitors, ready to mop up the aftermath with canned sympathy and follow-up emails. And then Gavin dropped it. Effective immediately, my name will be leaving the company. The room didn't gasp. Not yet, just silence. Shock in a beige conference room with stale air and flickering lights. She's been a valued contributor, he continued, but as we pivot towards scalable futures, it's become clear that her role no longer aligns with our trajectory. There it was. The line. not aligned with the future. Like I was a crooked picture frame on a minimalist wall. I stood, smooth, no shake in my legs, no tremble in my hands. I walked to the front, every step echoing like a countdown, looked him dead in the eyes and handed him my badge. Then I said it, quiet, cold. Then you'd better explain to investors why the servers go offline in 9 minutes. The words didn't echo, they detonated. Gavin blinked, just once. Then he laughed, loud and forced, like a sitcom character trying to kill tension with canned confidence. That's a joke, right? No smile from me. That's when the gasps came. From the rows behind, from the engineers, from marketing, from Colton, who looked up from his laptop with the dawning realization that something was wrong. I turned around, walked out, didn't look back. By the time I hit the elevator, my phone vibrated with a push from the company MDM, Endpoint Manager. Final ping. Opened the app, selected my work laptop, hit Remove Device. The system hesitated for a split second, then confirmed. Device successfully unlinked. The heartbeat demon got the message. The kill switch began its countdown, 9 minutes. From the parking lot, I watched people start to move behind the glass. Gavin leaning into Colton's laptop. Colton pointing. Someone from HR waving at someone in IT. But me? I just rolled down the window. Let the July heat pour in. Opened an iced tea, because Gavin didn't just fire a person. He fired the last functioning circuit in a system held together by memory, tape, and one woman's patience. And that system was done being patient. 2 minutes in, the first ping hit the expired license key. Silent, unremarkable, just a whisper between servers that had been doing this dance for years, until one of them blinked and didn't blink back. The heartbeat demon waited. No response. It logged the silence like a priest reading last rites. At minute 4, the failover protocol tripped, or tried to. The secondary database cluster, built back in 2019 on hardware Gavin deemed unnecessary overhead, was still technically online. But the replication key, that little strip of digital glue holding both systems in sync, it had been revoked the moment my token died. The failover hung. Then it failed. Gracefully, elegantly, completely. By minute 7, the load balancer got nervous. Requests started timing out. Metrics spiked. Dashboards across every department turned crimson with error 500s like a Christmas massacre. Back in the office, someone screamed, "Why is Salesforce down?" Gavin barked, "Reboot it all. Hard reset," like he was blowing on a Nintendo cartridge. Colton was clicking things. Anything. He had 6 tabs open to Stack Overflow and one YouTube video titled "How to Not Panic During a Production Outage." Too late, buddy. Too late. From my car, parked across the lot, engine off, seat reclined, I took another sip of iced tea. It was the good kind, too. Peach with a splash of bourbon I'd poured in at home just in case today got festive. The building looked smaller from out here, just a dumb glass box filled with people who thought high availability came from inspirational posters and team lunches. My phone buzzed, not a call. A ping from a friend still inside. Gavin is sweating, like visibly, investors on the call, total chaos. I opened my browser, typed in a familiar URL. My name dev, the screen loaded fast. Light gray background. Big black letters in the center. Oops. No footer, no nav bar, no explanation. Just one word. Oops, 'cause that's what they'd all say. That's what Gavin would mutter to legal. What Colton would type in Slack. What the postmortem would start with oops. The funny thing, no code was broken. No systems hacked. Everything was working exactly as designed. They just never cared to learn who had designed it. The iced tea was warm now, didn't matter. The real heat was still coming, and there were 2 minutes left. Minute 9 arrived like a guillotine. Not loud, just final. Last server blinked. The cloud instance tried to authenticate, found no token. The backup buckets, frozen. Immutable mirrors of the data, inaccessible without the admin bridge that had quietly self-immolated the moment Gavin revoked my credentials. The internal dashboard, Gavin's pride and joy, the one he showed off to investors like a toddler with finger paint, went black, then gray, then error. In the investor meeting, one voice cut through the static. Crisp, British. Didn't she build your infrastructure? Gavin blinked, stammered. She was part of the team. I mean, she handled operational duties. She didn't own anything critical. Silence. Then, so who does now? Legal started flipping through a red folder that might as well have been filled with blank pages. No one knew, because no one asked. The old credentials were scrubbed. The new ones, never configured. They'd bet the farm on a foundation they didn't understand. Fired the only person who did. Colton, now pale as a PDF background, whispered, "We don't have access to the core repo." Her 2FA is still linked to her. Gavin snapped, "Get her on the phone." Security dialed twice. In my car, I watched the number flash across my phone screen. Unrecognized, area code, internal, decline. Another call, decline. I opened settings, blocked the number. Then I toggled on the final setting in my out-of-office autoresponder. If anyone emailed, pinged, or texted my work credentials now, they'd get one line in reply: "Please contact your system administrator." She no longer exists. I backed out of the lot slow. No screech, no drama, just the steady hum of a car that didn't need permission to move forward. Behind me, the building flickered once. Lights still on. Systems still dead. They could call the vendors. They could open support tickets. They could panic, spin, scream. They'd never find what they lost. Because it wasn't just access. It wasn't just knowledge. It was trust. And that house runs on trust. I think what hits hardest here isn't just the revenge. It's the total dismissal of quiet, competent workers by people who think titles equal intelligence. There's something deeply satisfying about watching someone underestimated for years reclaim power without raising their voice. You're the real stars of the corporate jungle. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe, or I'll flick the switch on your old cubicle memories.